Alright, welcome back. Time for round 1. I lost the die roll, and of course my lack of 2-drops is already kind of punishing. I'm not gonna mulligan this. I'm on the draw, and I only need a land for my 3-drops, but if my opponent is up to a fast start, then I might be in trouble. Vortex Elemental is fine. I'm happy to see something that isn't going to put any pressure on me for a very long time, and even then it's not gonna be a bad thing for me. Alright, Vortex Elemental gets in there. Fine. And no lands on the top of my library so far. This is where Stymied Hopes would have been great. So it kind of depends how powerful of a 3-drop my opponent has here. Thassa's Ire really going slowly. Now I really need a land. Yeah, there it is. Alright, that was good. I'm not going to cast Divination here. I would go up to 8 cards. And I have plays that are quite strong for the, well, forever, basically, for the next turns. Is this a bounce spell? Wow, Hubris. Very aggressive Hubris. I'm fine with trading my opponent's cards that way. Sigil Starfish is going to be somewhat of a problem. This is going to generate quite a lot of value for my opponent in the long run. On the other hand, my opponent hasn't really put up anything that does. Yeah, I'm probably going to ignore the Starfish for a while. It's going to scry lands to the bottom, which is good, but not insane by any means. Would be nice to draw a land at some point, but I'm not going to run out the Divination just to discard. And also this means that my Butcher will get the Inspire trigger. And what's better than one Butcher? It's just another one. There's still Vortex Elemental, there's the Starfish. With the Thassa's Ire on my opponent's side, I would say that he actually wants to draw lands in a sense. So if scrying all the lands to the bottom means that the Thassa's Ire is a lot less effective, then I'm also happy about it. So not even dropping a land means that Vortex Elemental isn't going to get active. Yeah, this is looking fine. I could actually kill the Starfish now with the Bolt of Kuranos, which is now castable, but I think it's still just far superior to curve out here. There is the Whelming Wave that could punish me, but I don't think that's playable. And my opponent is kind of locked here. He has spent his last turns just activating Thassa's Ire, so. By the way, I put up the big card view so that you could read the cards better. I know that the new layout makes reduces some of the screen size or reduces the cards for you at home. I've been told that it's going to be changed, but I'll be using it until I get an update. So maybe this view helps a little bit to compensate for the smaller screen size. Arbor Colossus. Well. That's a good one. So, Arbor Colossus is actually good enough to suicide a Krutma Butcher into, and then to finish it off with Bowl of Kuranos. Opponent is on 18, and the Bladehouse Boar puts on a lot of pressure. My opponent has no pressure at all except for the Colossus. Both of my Butchers are alive, and attacking with both of them also deals an additional 4, or forces my opponent's Vortex Elemental to block. I think that's a fine use of Bolt of Kuranos here. I'm not happy to do it, but Arbor Colossus is powerful enough to warrant these measures, I think. If my opponent doesn't block, I'm also happy about it, of course. I would love to have a more efficient trick here, but this is what I'm working with. So bolt that, keep the Starfall on top. I can cast it for 5, and it's a great spell to have. My opponent will want to deal with the Bladehouse Boar sooner or later, and if he decides to Thassa's Ire it, then the plan might be to kill Krutma Butcher with Vortex Elemental or trade these two, so then the Starfall is going to be huge as well. Siren of the Fang Coast, that's a good one. I'm gonna give my opponent a 4/4. Yes. That's a lot better for me than him getting control of Blade Tusk Boar. And now what I could do is Starfall the Vortex Elemental so that the Kragma Butcher has to be blocked by something. The problem is that I will lose my whole offense because my opponent will then have a 4-4. Well, maybe not. It trades with a 4-4, but then my Blade Tusk Boar is stopped by Thassa's Ire, and I would need to spend one full turn to rebuild that. It might be better to just drop Prescient Chimera, hit my opponent down to 8, and then I'm threatening to bestow the Spearpoint Aureate, which my opponent doesn't know. So the Siren might not actually be able to attack me next turn. I'm still attacking with the Butcher because I need to trade them. I need to trade the Vortex Elemental for the Butcher. And that's because it would only be a 2-3 if I ever not attack with it. And then the Starfish can block it and stuff like that. I don't want that to happen. So I'm just gonna rely on the Chimera here. Like I said, I can't really see the Siren of the Fang Coast attacking. I'm kind of confused that my opponent didn't use the Starfish there. I think that was unintentional. After the shuffling with Vortex Elemental, you usually want to scry. And the Starfish could have also scried in the upkeep, because it wasn't really clear what my opponent wanted there. Alright, I expect with the 7 mana that the Blade Tusk Boar gets tapped and then the Chimera can't really attack. I'm also just gonna run out another Chimera, which is more efficient than casting my other spells. If my opponent wants to spend all this mana, I think I'm more than fine with that. Oh wait, what happened there? My opponent did this in his main phase, so I still have the option to bestow Spearpoint Aureate onto Pressing Chimera and attack, which could be huge. I might be running into a trick here, but this is probably just a mistake on my opponent's part for not waiting until the beginning of combat. I could just assume that my opponent played correctly and not try to take advantage of it. There's always the slight danger that I'm running into a trick, but bestowing the Spearpoint Aureate here looks pretty sweet. I'm just gonna go for it. Maybe my opponent made a mistake, maybe he's holding Retraction Helix and I'm getting blown out, but it's still a very good use of my turn if it works out. If I deal 5 here, I'm almost guaranteed to win because of the Starfall that I'm holding. Alright, this looks like a trick. Oh, it's a pretty good one even. Creating a 6/6 here. Yeah, that was a bad exchange for me, but Feral Invocation is pretty much the worst card that could happen there. I also have the Stormcaller with haste, so I could actually just attack with haste at some point. My opponent also forced to pretty much keep up mana to tap the Blade Tusk Boar. And I'm still on 20, so now it becomes interesting. I take 6 here, but I'm attacking back for more than my opponent thought. Stone Chaser Chimera. So now, with the 6 mana, I can't really use my mana too effectively. I could Divination and play the Stormcaller to make sure that I at least deal 2. And that puts on the most pressure, whereas my opponent is still forced to Thassa's Ire. I could also Starfall the Starfish, but I should probably wait for an enchantment. Yeah, I'm gonna Divination. At some point I have to Divination anyway. And this turn looks like I can do it without too much trouble. Griptide looks really promising as well. Griptiding the Siren, I'll probably have to do that once my opponent stays back on defense. That looks even better. I'm not in any danger of dying. I can take 2 more hits from the Siren. And the Fond of Fortune is also a really bad card for my opponent right now. Oh, okay. This is taking more damage than my opponent should be taking. Allowing me to attack with Blade Tusk Boar means I get to deal 3 damage rather than 2. Okay, my opponent probably wants to sacrifice Fond of Fortunes. I guess that's reasonable, but with the active Starfish, I think minimizing the amount of damage you're taking is more important. So now there's 8 mana in play, which means that Thassa's Ire looks a lot better. But what my opponent doesn't know is that the Grip Tide on my side of the board is going to change that, because then the Siren is put as suddenly very expensive. All right, do we see an attack here? Yeah, we do. So the Thassa's Ire is probably just going to be used to threaten the untap of the Siren again, and I might just be able to respond by Grip Tiding. I could scry in the upkeep, but if I draw a land, I can actually play the Chimera, so I'm going to see if that happens. All right. So now I'm doubly safe from the untap on the Siren. And I'm attacking because I want my opponent to untap the Siren so that I can then Grip Tide in response, which should be the killing blow, hopefully. Alright, that was a nice tempo swing. And even if my opponent draws a land here, I think that just casting a 4/4 Siren leaves him dead on board. So if this is what my opponent thinks as well, he'll just put the Sphinx on the bottom. It might actually be that my opponent doesn't even have the land, and then of course his draw step isn't going to give him a land. Alright, there's land number 9. So I can scry run and then pretty much do the Rill of Lightning thing, where this gets +X/+0. So now I had, well, not 4 lethal creatures, but 4 almost lethal creatures. And Blatar Spore was kind of the most important card here. The Fair Invocation was pretty sweet for my opponent. Maybe I should have been more careful, but I saw an opening, I saw a potential mistake that my opponent might have made, and I tried to go for it. I'm not unhappy about that. Annul looks pretty sweet, given that there are Feral Invocations and Thassa's Ire in my opponent's deck, so that's definitely an option. Kira's Dismissal is also kind of sweet, also on Thassa's Ire, not unreasonable. And I don't really have to worry about being too slow. My opponent's deck is really slow as well, and yeah, I can take my time. That doesn't really mean that Siren Songlyre and Springleaf Drum are better, because my creatures will actually be quite aggressive. Hopefully. So my opponent's best creature was the Sphinx, and all the rest really just trying to generate value with Scrying Starfish, which I can get behind. It's one of my favorite things to do, but I can hopefully punish that a bit. Starfall wasn't amazing, but I think it's going to be fine. Stymied Hope's not as good on the draw, and I'm almost certainly going to be on the draw. The evasive creature is pretty much the key to this matchup, and overall not really too much that I'm unhappy about. I think one Annul or maybe a Nullify is something that I could board here, but I'm not even sure which card I would not want to have. I really like most of the cards I have. I think Stymied Hope's probably the card that I can do without being on the draw. And then it's either Annul or Nullify, I think, with Kira's Dismissal also being pretty sweet, but not as long-term as the other options. I'm gonna try the Annul for this game and then see how it works out. I'm on the draw. This hand looks fine. My opponent mulligans. There's actually a matchup where my opponent could have just decided to draw first. Don't think that would have necessarily been wrong. I'm hoping to draw the second mountain for the Bolt. Maybe if my opponent plays the Starfish. Voyaging Satyr, not as threatening. Opponent hasn't really shown too much scary things. I would still kill it, depending on what my opponent's next play is. Could also go infinite with the right market festivals, maybe. That would be really cool. Red source? No. Island is pretty much the worst draw here. I have enough lands, and the one card that I don't need in my deck is islands. So that was not a good draw. if I'm taking 2 here and nothing else happens, I'm really happy. So even if I had drawn a mountain here, I'm not sure if I would have killed the satyr. I really want to grind out my opponent. Is this another hubris? No. It looked like my opponent was thinking about it. I'm kind of scared of the Warring Siren. If there's a Feral Invocation... Oh, that's also good. Time to feed. Yep. Blade Tusk Boar goes down. So now I can actually think about killing the Voyaging Satyr, just so that my opponent has some more mana troubles and I have more time to develop. On the other hand, 4 cards, 3 lands. I think mana screening my opponent is probably not what I want to be doing with my opponent having an active Warring Siren. I'm just going to run out the Stormcaller here. I get to attack for 2, I get to scry. I'm not trying to hold off the Voyaging Satyr. If it attacks, I would probably be scared to block anyway. And it is a mana source for my opponent, most importantly. So that's what we actually see here. The mana it generates being more important than anything else. Alright, no place. The second mountain, I probably need to keep that just so that I can cast Bowl of Karanos and all these sweet cards. I also need to be aware that Thassa's Ire can now tap down the Stormcaller. So I kind of need to kill the Voyaging Satyr, I think. Especially if tapping or untapping is part of my opponent's plan now. And what's kind of difficult for me is the fact that... Is this Feral Invocation? I would be actually fine with Feral Invocation. I can't play around that in my blue-red deck, I think, right now. And if it's not going onto the Warring Siren, it might actually be easier for me to survive. It's also possible that my opponent just wants to untap the land. No, hubris. Alright, so making sure that I don't scry. I think that's a fair trade for me. I get to activate the Stormcaller again, which I want more than getting the Nyxborn Triton into play. My main concern is that bestowing the Triton with an active Thassa's Ire is just not very profitable. And my opponent continues to race me, which I think I'm favored in currently. Not that I'm winning the race, but I'm scrying every turn and there's only a 2/4 flyer, which I should be able to deal with. I'm not sure if Omen Speaker is a card that I actually want to draw. Omen Speaker kind of only really does nothing if I have an active Stormcaller. I'm just going to put this on the bottom. And I might want to scry in the upkeep again, because currently I don't have anything I want to be doing, and this improves my chances of drawing, for example, a Pressing Chimera, which I would be really happy about. A Null. Now that's interesting. I could just keep this on top because it's a spell. Could also put it on the bottom because it's not really helping me here. One thing I could see is just bestowing Nyxborn Triton this turn, because forcing my opponent to leave up Thassa's Ire for the rest of the game is going to be really costly for him. And that probably means that I don't want to be able to annul, but I want to draw sweet cards instead. Stormchaser Chimera is of course stronger than bestowing the Nyxborn Triton. I want to diversify my threat base anyway, and there is no need to make Thassa's Ire stronger than necessary. So pretty easy Stormchaser here. And again, if my opponent attacks, I might have to respect the fact that there is a trick looming. I'm also going to reach 8 lands next turn, and then the Stormchaser could put up a lot of pressure. Also, if I leave open 8 mana, then my opponent can't really risk to attack or block the Stormchaser without a great trick. Or maybe a bounce spell would also work. Alright, it is attacking, so I can't block here. I think it's too dangerous. And I'm still on 10, so I'm not in a huge danger. Didn't scry here because I wanted to threaten the 8 mana. And now I expect my Stormchaser to be tapped down. No, it's actually not. That's interesting. Now that does look like it could be a trick. But I'm not blocking the Warring Siren on defense anyway. So I'll just see what happens here. Is my opponent really untapping Warwing Siren? Alright. Breaching Hippocamp resolves. This looks crazy to me. What? You wouldn't ever block there. No, just to not block. Interesting. So now I know that there is a Breaching Hippocamp in play. I have the Stormcaller to block it, or I have the Starfall, or I just cast Nyxborn Triton, or I bestow Nyxborn Triton onto Stormcaller. Bestowing seems like the best value, but allows my opponent to tap down my Stormcaller and hit me for 5, which I really don't want. I kind of want to Starfall it, but then my opponent could have a lot better targets for me to Starfall. I think my best line is to just hardcast Nyxborn Triton here in order to survive and have all the scry available and so on. I'm also holding up Starfall, so if there is any kind of tricks by my opponent, I can respond with Starfall. Okay, only Breaching Hippocamp, so my opponent quite a bit more defensive now. I'm just gonna offer the Nyxborn Triton, if that's something my opponent wants to do. And then no play. So I could end of turn Starfall the Voyaging Satyr, making sure that Thassa's Ire isn't getting activated, or just make sure that I'm drawing a sweet card. I think Starfall is fine here. My opponent wants to respond with Feral Invocation or Bounce, then as last time, at least the Warwing Siren isn't being the target. And the Starfall isn't really an amazing card anyway. Okay, it looks like this isn't just resolving, so I am drawing some kind of spell out of my opponent's hand. And I get to think about next turn, if I want to upkeep the Storm Chaser maybe. If my opponent doesn't have the mana for the Thassa's Ire, I might just do that to make sure that there's a spell on top. Yeah, I think that's... It might be even sweeter to not give my opponent the information, but I want to draw a spell here, and I think activating the Storm Chaser is the best way of doing that. So I'm gonna put the Daring Thief on top, create a 5/3, draw the Daring Thief. Could have activated the Storm Chaser again, but I don't want to do that. And now I think I'm very far ahead. The one card that I have to play around is Feral Invocation, so it might be best not to attack with the Storm Chaser, because the Feral Invocation creates a 5-power flyer. Or I just gamble and attack with it. My opponent gets a 5/7. I need to hit at least a 2-drop, so I need to hit a spell basically with the Storm Chaser, and that could then decide the game pretty much. The problem is if my opponent end of turn Feral Invocations the Warwing Siren, and I have tapped out for Daring Thief, then I'm just losing the race. No, pretty much no matter what. Maybe if I hit a Tomocratis on top, but yeah, racing just seems safer here. And if there is a Feral Invocation, I'm just gonna activate the Storm Chaser and hope for the best. Daring Thief would be too slow, so. Alright, this creates a 3/5. So now I expect the Storm Chaser to get bounced. Alright, yeah, that's a fair exchange. My opponent has a 3-power flyer, which is a lot less threatening, and I get to run out the Daring Thief, which allows me to still scry and somehow threaten the Warwing Siren, and the Storm Chaser will still be able to block next turn. I'm gonna try to outcontrol this game, rather than to race with Storm Chaser or anything of that sorts. Okay, this is also good news. No attack by my opponent is pretty much the best. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I know that I'm Storm Chasering. If I draw a land here, I can then start scrying, or I scry runs, but then I can't activate the Storm Chaser, so I'm just gonna draw the card. It's a land. I probably should have... Well, my opponent wouldn't have tapped anything on attack, so I think casting the Storm Chaser there pre-combat wasn't making any difference. Oh wow, so now things get a bit more interesting. Really need to find something sweet with the Storm color now, next turn. Crewfix? Devotion to green and blue is not a problem right now. It's 5, but 5, okay. Hand size doesn't matter. And unused mana, yeah, my opponent isn't going to have a lot of unused mana overall. Scrying with Stormcaller is better here. Pressing Chimera is definitely a card I want to draw. It's a flyer, and it's pretty huge. It also means that I can just make this 7 power in my upkeep. And I'm not really close to dead, but my opponent is threatening to alpha me with the Thassa's Ire, so I really want to pressure my opponent while doing so. Keep this on top, draw it, attack with my 7 power creature, which trades for Cloaked Siren, which is kind of bad. But I'm dropping another flyer and I have the Scry available, so I think that's better than... Well, I want my opponent to have the least amount of creatures possible. That's pretty much the reason why I'm attacking. Every creature is potentially threatening to kill me with an Alpha Strike of Thassa's Ire and even the potential of Crewfix to become active. But if I just hold my opponent's creature count low, then the danger of him just tapping down creatures with Thassa's Ire and so on is a lot less. Let's see if the Stormcaller finds me something nice. No. Alright, I'll take this. Can't attack here. I'm not gonna bluff anything with the Pressing Chimera. I think that wouldn't really work out so well. I'm also quite favored the longer this game goes. Is my opponent gonna float the mana? Yeah. This is a nice play because now Thassa's Ire kind of stacks up and is then going to tap down a whole lot of creatures on my side. I could actually lose this to this sweet combo here. Eternity Snare. Alright, doesn't untap. So now Thassa's Ire basically kills it. Still no attacks. Triton Tactics. I think I want to keep that. That is pretty great. Ooh, I actually don't know how to play this now. The Triton Tactics means that I will be able to trigger Daring Thief. I'll be able to untap Pressing Chimera if I ever want that. I will be able to trade the tap Pressing Chimera for, let's say, Warring Siren. I have so many sweet plays here. Wow. I would actually like to take control of Thassa's Ire also, but I don't have anything to do that. I think my best bet is to be very patient here and to hope that things work out somehow. If I attack with the Daring Thief now, I'm just afraid that well, then I'm forced to Triton Tactics and then it might be too early. I don't want it to do that too early. Now, what my opponent could do is to use Vortex Elemental to kill Daring Thief for the cost of 6 mana. That is an issue, but there isn't really much reason for my opponent to do that because from his perspective, I'm not really threatening to trigger the thief at all. So why do something like that? With the Griptide, I think my best line is to attack with the Chimera that wouldn't untap anyway, and with the Pressing Chimera that I kind of want to get in with anyway. Could also attack with everything, but then the problem is the Vortex Elemental trading really unfavorable, well, trading somewhat unfavorably with the creatures that I don't really want to trade with. So I think this is my attack, and that allows me then to just grip tide that. Scry 2, probably superfluous because of the Stormcaller. And I'm hoping that this resolves. I needed to attack first, otherwise my opponent would have just activated Thassa's Ire. And I considered the Pressing Chimera attack with the Eternity Snared one. I basically considered it free because my opponent could have also just always just tapped the Thassa's Ire, tapped it with Thassa's Ire, and then I would have never really gotten anywhere. Now that I think about it, I actually could have made a pretty sweet play by attacking with all of my creatures, because if my opponent had activated the Vortex Elemental, then the Warring Siren wouldn't have been left on top of my opponent's deck, which is definitely something to consider. Alright. Opponent spends a green mana. That doesn't really matter. My opponent has all the mana in the world, but I'm drawing exactly the right card to beat this board here. Also, my opponent is never really doing anything with the mana, so far the Krufix is not a scary card for me. Let's see if that resolves. I certainly wouldn't mind. I expect at least one of the creatures to go down, which is already sufficient. Vortex Elemental could shuffle itself back in. Blue mana also necessary to tap creatures, so yeah, that's a good one. I expect that my opponent was holding that for a long time. Of course, I can't really say for certain, but on the bottom, Krufix is active, if even for a very short time here. And Kragma Butcher, well, not an insane card, but maybe I just want to have some creatures here. I think it's a fine draw, and I need to draw just some spells, so I think that's fine. Now this is a 4/6 that has taken 3, which means that both of my attackers aren't really lethal here. I could attack with both and then give my opponent the tapped Chimera with the Eternity Snare on it, which isn't a good card for my opponent. And I get the Warring Siren, and I hit for 4. Daring Thief is already untapped at that point. I think I can't do that, because if I give my opponent the Pressing Chimera, then it's just going to get untapped. Oh well, it doesn't really kill anything though. It just doesn't feel like that's really a big win on my part. Question is if I ever get to use the Triton Tactics on offense, because then my opponent will just tap down the 2 creatures that are untapped, which isn't really great. I think I'm going to go for it here. And let's check the devotion count just quickly. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if I give my opponent the Pressing Chimera, then it's actually 7 again. So that Krufix is active. I don't think I want Krufix active. Yeah, let's not do that. That doesn't seem good. If I can help it, I will prefer that Krufix is just sitting around here, not doing anything. Alright, there's Warring Siren. So now this is the attack stab that's basically fueled by Thassa's Ire, and I'm just gonna take it. I could Triton Tactics here, but like I said, my opponent would just tap down. And now that I think about it, I have so many scries, I think I can find something better than Kragma Butcher. I should have probably put that on the bottom. It's not the high impact card that I want at this stage of the game. I'll just take another line. Of course, it would have been better had I played this differently, but I think I'm still fine. I have so much scry. Oh, interesting, in my upkeep. Airy Worshippers, also not amazing. It isn't bad against the Warring Siren, and it doesn't really get stopped by Thassa's Ire, so that's something. Let's see, I do have the mana to cast it. Yeah, I'll probably take it. It's not a huge upgrade, but at least it's not horrible either. My opponent is just trying to kill me quickly here, obviously. This is a really, really weird game. Tap the Stormcaller, okay. Always tapping in my main phase, by the way. This is really dangerous. And untap that is also fine. So now my opponent is actually down to 1 mana, having used up all the mana. What I can't do is Triton Tactics, the Daring Thief now, so I need to attack with only the Daring Thief and then untap it, giving my opponent the tap Prescient Chimera. Yeah, I think that's still a fine trade. I need to get rid of Warring Siren, so let's just do that now. I don't really want to give my opponent the Chimera. I could actually give my opponent the Stormcaller, just so that this crew fix is not a problem, and my opponent doesn't really have the mana to use the other things effectively. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. So attack with this, scry one last time with the Stormcaller, put the Divination on top, Triton Tactics, the Daring Thief, and this Pressing Chimera because it's more powerful untapped. Scry again, leave the cards on top. I guess I could have scried from the Chimeras first. Well, it wouldn't have mattered. So now Daring Thief untaps, and I'm exchanging the Stormcaller for the Warring Siren, so that my opponent now is able to scry for blue, but only gets a 2/2 that isn't even increasing his devotion count, rather than giving him a 3/4 flyer that also turns on crew fix. I think that's superior. And yeah, I mean, scrying is fine, but also very costly now. And Thassa's Ire will probably be forced to just tap down my creatures. Of course, tapping down this is only a one-time cost. Afterwards, the snare is active again, but it's still better to untap that than anything else. Puts a card on the bottom. Down to 5 minutes. I really need to win this game pretty soon. Let's see if that works out. Could just Divination first here. My opponent will be forced to tap down creatures. I might also have one already, but I see no reason not to Divination first. Pretty fun deck with the crew fix and Thassa's Ire. Wouldn't have thought that. Taps the Warring Siren, that resolves. Still needs to prevent quite a bit of damage, and I'm getting to see 4 more cards. Oh, was my opponent dead? I don't think so. Tapping down this, I attack for 7, and the Stormcaller chump blocks the Daring Thief. Alright, yeah, that's pretty dead. So getting the Daring Thief to trigger pretty much decided the game. I wouldn't have found anything crazy good here. This is the card that I was looking for. Huh, pretty cool match to start it off. Well, let's see if this inspired deck can win one more round.